Today's voiceover talent is more than just a pretty voice. Today's voiceover talent has to be a boss, a VO boss. Set yourself up with business owner strategies and success with your host, Anne Ganguzza, along with some of the strongest voices in our industry. Rock your business like a boss. A VO boss.
Hey everybody, welcome to the VO B.O.S.S podcast. I'm your host, Anne Ganguzza, along with my lovely co-host, Gabby Nistico. Hey Gabby.
Hello.
Gabby, I am excited today. We have a special guest who is a wonderful colleague and friend, Monique Bagwell. Monique, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yay. Thank you for having me. Woo-hoo. Yay.
And thank goodness, Monique, because today's topic is something that I need help with, and I think Gabby too. We've all been having quite a week where technology hasn't been working right, computers have been crashing, and it's crazy. So we're going to talk today to you about emotional intelligence, because you are not only in the trenches of the voiceover industry, but you also host or interview on a podcast about emotional intelligence. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I am a host for a podcast called Emotions Matter, and the organization that funds this podcast is called EMAW. That's EMAWW. And they're a technology startup group, and they focus on artificial intelligence. And what they're trying to do is find a way to empower people with emotional awareness. So down the road, they are actually going to develop some kind of app that will allow people to monitor algorithms to help us build a more sensitive awareness to our emotions. That's their end goal, is to build this app. And so wow. I know. So my role in it is much simpler. I'm not at all in the technology part of it, and that is to interview people worldwide about emotional situations. And a lot of them are experts, or just their field invites sort of high emotional interactions. And I talk to people about, well, how do you deal with some of these emotions? How do you turn a really strong emotion into something that's positive? How do you make the emotions work for you instead of against you? And I got involved because of my own interest in emotional connection for the actor, because as you know, my background's in theater, and so I spent quite some time studying this method called Alba Emoting, and it's a scientific somatic process that anyone, you don't have to be an actor, this is for anybody, on how to reconnect with your emotions, any of your basic emotions, without going through all of the emotional baggage, can we say, where you don't have to go into your past and think of this tragedy or this happy moment to try to awaken those feelings in you. That this is actually a physiological condition that you can create by tapping into these effector patterns. And so I've studied these effector patterns with master instructors, and I myself am certified as a level 3 Alba Emoting instructor. And I'll tell you something, Anne and Gabby, this is how I see it being very helpful. It's not just helpful because you can connect with your emotions, but it's also helpful because it helps you let go of your emotions. It helps you get to a state of, you want to call it neutrality. I'm not sure if I completely believe in this concept of neutrality, but it brings you to a neutral base or a starting point. And so as an actress myself, and the reason I was attracted to the Alba Emoting is I would be in a play and I would do a role, let's say Hedda Gabler. Now, Hedda Gabler at the end of the play, don't want to be a spoiler here, but she kills herself. And so, and I performed her. And after I finished that show, I found myself being kind of depressed. I was feeling kind of depressed, kind of moody, and I couldn't figure it out for the life
Wow.
of me. And I was holding on to that character. I was, living and
Wow.
breathing and being Hedda Gabler. And you think about it. Think about all the famous actors that that have unfortunately, committed suicide, either on purpose or accidentally because of
Yeah.
addictions.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were intense actors, you know.
Interesting.
And so I would venture to say that they had what we call emotional hangover. And you just take on these characters, and you see, if you've ever had an acting class or been involved in theater, the main objective of the director is to get you into character.
Sure.
No matter what, they get you into character. They want you to recreate that moment on stage as naturally and as believably as possible, but they never tell you how to get out of it. They would do it maybe unconsciously. They say, "Oh, let's go have a beer," right? Or go get a drink, or take your costume off, and now you're no longer the character. They might do suggestive things like that, but sometimes it's just not enough because
No.
emotions are part of your life system. And it's not always as easy as taking off a piece of clothing. You have to get it out of your system somehow, and the best way to do it is through these breathing and stretching and sort of mindful techniques.
Wow. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. And you're so true what you said about, some of the more famous actors. I mean, I say it with a little bit of pain in my heart quite regularly that a lot of my heroes are dead. And
Yeah.
many of them from suicide and many of them from mental illness, and that difficulty in coping with emotions, difficulty in processing them, difficulty in letting them go. And it's something that people deal with at all different points in their life, regardless of whether or not they have a mental illness diagnosis, perhaps as well. And from a business standpoint, to kind of bring it full circle back to that, can be very difficult to not allow our emotions to have an active role in our businesses. So, Monique, what are the kinds of things that you've learned and that you recommend to people with that?
Well, I think what's important is, first of all, being able to identify that emotional state that you might be in when you're communicating. So being aware, for example, of just how you're holding your breath or not holding your breath. Where's your breath coming from? Being aware of the tensions in your body. One of the emotional effector patterns that we try and we do is sadness, for example. And all emotions have a sort of a spectrum of intensity. Okay, so let's say 100% sadness is just grief, hopelessness, helplessness, just total grief. And then, maybe 10% is just feeling blue, just feeling a little bit meh, like that. And so to understand how you're breathing, how your posture is, you will never ever see a really happy person with their posture up, open, chest open, face wide, if they're not hiding it, I should say, if they're trying to conceal it, if they're genuinely feeling sadness, you can spot that a mile away,
Well,
but just by the posture.
for example, like I think that Gabby and I both have had like a week with technology. It's been frustrating and angering and and just I think Gabby, we met the other day, and just the first look on your face was, oh my God, it's been that kind of a day. So Monique,
Yeah.
what are some techniques that you recommend, or maybe exercises that you recommend to try to get yourself to, all right, we've identified the emotion. Now, how do we get ourselves out of that place so that we can actually become productive and perform and run our businesses?
I think the hardest thing, Anne, uh, for me and I think for most people, is there's always a way to get ourselves out of these things, but we never want to really take the time. Sometimes we kind of chug
Right.
through it, we try
Yeah.
to just go through it like good little warriors. We're just gonna get through it. At some point, like you just said, you're gonna hit a wall, and you're just not going to be able to do anything.
Well,
And you're
that's
going to
what
get that.
so many of us were taught. It was,
Yeah.
suck it
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is exactly it. So I would say, go with your physical. You're hunched over, right? You're at your computer. Your neck is slightly jutting forward because you're getting to that microphone. I mean,
I
you're
have physical
tilting your
pain.
head.
I have physical pain when I'm stressed. No, seriously, like my
Yes.
neck or it's absolutely. I'm sorry.
And when you're in pain, you don't feel good. You're not happy. And that just culminates. And if you've been doing this over a period of hours, days, weeks, oh my gosh, you're a mess, until you go to the chiropractor and you get your adjustment, or you go to the massage therapist.
So true.
I mean, I don't know about you. When I go to a massage therapist, I leave there and I feel like I was just on vacation. All that tension. And so
And
that
I
tension
can't
harbors
perform.
emotions.
I can't perform in the booth when I can't do my auditions, and that's why it's so critical, I think, for us to really have like some way to perhaps hopefully get out of that quicker rather than
Yeah.
you know.
Well, if you're feeling like that, if you're feeling detachment, you're either experiencing a really low grade of sadness or depression because you're doing this again and it's not making you happy, right? Or you are angry because it's not getting done, and you're getting frustrated. And all of that, the anger definitely takes its tension in the jaw, in the shoulders. A pure sense of anger is always moving forward, because when you're angry, you're seeking. You're seeking out something. It's a very forward motion kind of emotion. You don't see too
Very
many
true.
people who are angry who are just sitting back relaxed. No, they're in motion. They're looking for something, or looking for trouble, whatever you want to think about it, but it's aggression and it's moving forward. And so if you're frustrated, you might find yourself pushing closer to the mic. Shoulders might be going up a little bit more. Your stridency in your voice might be getting tight. And that's just a sign you need a break. You need to stretch. I mean, just simple stretching, whatever you can do. Just simply lifting your arms, all the way over your head. I'm talking basic here. Interlocking your fingers, reaching up over your head, stretching out your arms, bending the elbows, bringing those fingers behind your head, and just opening up that whole area. It's not going to cure you right there and then. Probably would need far more intense stretching and deep breathing, in a quiet, sort of calm way, meditative way. I mean, everybody has their own technique, but I think everybody has their own way. I would just always say, don't grab the drink, don't grab the smokes, don't grab the drugs. Those aren't really going to help in the long run. Go with the stretching, the breathing. Get that extra tension out of your body, because anger, that's where it sits, in that jaw, those shoulders, and then the roundness of your shoulders. That's where depression and sadness goes. That pulling downward is where you see a lot of the effect or physical patterns that we do for sadness, and the breathing gets also kind of shallow. So stay in tune to that. And like you said earlier, Anne, even voiceover actors have to get involved with characters. And commercial may be more happy. I don't know. Do you think commercials tend to be a little bit more on the joyful side because you're excited about something, right? PSAs maybe more on the mellow downside usually. I mean, that's just my perspective, but I'm thinking audiobooks. Boy, oh boy, even the last few audiobooks that I've done, and you're spending hours, right? Hours in the booth with the audiobooks, not only narrating, but editing and all that. Boy, oh boy, and if you're dealing with a character, I had to acknowledge myself several times already when I've gotten involved with a character that dies.
Yep.
Even though I know they're going to die. Oh my gosh, I've even written the author, like, I can't believe you... I can't believe you killed him, and they'll laugh. And of course, I'm, not attacking them, but I'll just say, I really enjoyed that character and I was sad to see him go. And you have to let that go. Isn't that funny? Even in that type of situation where I'm not physically getting up and acting like these characters. So you can imagine movie stars, they're breathing, eating, acting. Who is it? Meryl Streep is known for talking like the character off camera and interacting with her co-stars like as though the camera were rolling on her. Her co-star was it about the African couple, the South African couple. He couldn't stand being around her off camera because she would start talking to him and interacting with him in character, and it drove him crazy.
That was Out of Africa. That was the name of the movie.
Yeah. Well, she never got out of Africa, apparently. Even if she were in California filming, she was still in Africa. Yeah, you just have to be mindful about that and recognize that and know going in the opposite direction. So, I mean, it sounds so obvious, right? If I'm sad and I'm feeling depressed and I'm forward, wow, just simply lifting my chest, counteracting that muscle, breathing in a different way, it starts to chip away at that, and then having an exercise or stretch regime that works best, for you. I think there's more and more people are looking at what can I do in the booth to help me have a clearer mind and brighter perspective.
You mentioned narration and audiobooks, and so I think if you're in the booth a long time, a lot of times I'll find if I'm doing a corporate read or some sort of e-learning material, it's so easy to detach yourself. You still have to get in character in a way. You're not as animated as in an audiobook perhaps, or animation or video game, but you still are in character and you still need to keep yourself attached to the copy so that you can deliver it effectively. But there's those times where you just kind of get in a zone and you're maybe bored. I've run into that a lot with my students, right? So they're very good cold readers and they can just read and detach themselves from it because they're not going to stumble or make a mistake, and so they're actually
Autopilot.
kind of bored. Yeah, they're on autopilot. So that's a real issue for people who do long format narration.
Yeah, it's almost like fake acting, right?
Yeah,
like you phone
exactly.
it in.
Yep.
Being in the present, that's a totally different thing. I would think being in the present, believe it or not, is a very, very mild form of anger. Because anger at 10% is concentration. So at 100%, it's like rage, right? Mm-hmm. But at 10%, when you're staring at your computer and you're leaning forward and you're so focused, that's concentration. That's the lowest form of anger. So, sometimes we try to be careful as Alba Emoters to not give a moral value to an emotion. Whether you're a religious person or not, as a human being, we were gifted with all of these emotions for a reason. They're all valuable. We need to have access to all of them.
Yeah,
right.
They're neither good nor bad.
Right, exactly.
What I think I hear you saying in a lot of these instances, Monique, is to lean into it a little, to acknowledge it and to stop and give yourself that moment to assess the situation and to assess your physical self and your state of mind, and then take an appropriate action instead of simply trying to continue to plow through and ignore whatever's going on.
Absolutely. Awareness. Boy, that's a $1 million word right there. If the more aware we are,
sure.
the greater ability we have to change our situation.
Mm-hmm. This has been fascinating.
How can people learn more? How can they connect with you?
Sure. Well, I do teach Alba Emoting, obviously, because I am also a full-time professor of speech and performance. So that is part of my wheelhouse, is to teach the Alba Emoting. So if anybody wanted to know more about that, they can simply, they can go to my webpage, MoniqueBagwell.com, or they can, email me at MoniqueBagwellVO@Outlook.com and connect that way. But if they just want to hear more, I would suggest that they go to the emaw.com website, EMAWW, or just look up Emotions Matter podcast.
Well, Monique, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we should have a part 2 and a part 3 to keep talking about it. You've been so helpful, for our listeners, and we thank you so much for sharing with us and for joining us today.
Oh, absolutely. It was my pleasure. I love this subject because, like I said, it's what makes us human, and it's always interesting and it's always different for people, but yet there's a commonality that we all share. So yes, thank you for letting me share this with everyone. It's a great awareness moment for everybody.
We appreciate it, and we appreciate you bringing us this little bit of enlightenment today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to give a big thanks and a shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL, for our quality connection. You too can record like a boss, and you can find out more at IPDTL.com. From all of us at the VO B.O.S.S podcast, have a kick-butt week.
Stay focused, and remember to rock your business
like a boss. A VO Boss. You can like us on Facebook at VO Boss Podcast and Twitter at VO_Boss.
You can also go to our website, VOBoss.com, where we want you to subscribe to our newsletter, and you can get exclusive offers and up-to-the-minute information about new episodes. And, of course, there's also the opportunity there to check out new shows and new episodes and see what else we have going on.
And subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher. Thanks so much, guys. We'll be back next week with another podcast.
Join us next week for another edition of VO B.O.S.S with your hosts, Anne Ganguzza and Gabby Nisterko. All rights reserved. Anne Ganguzza voice talent in association with 3 Moon Media. Redistribution with permission. Coast to coast connectivity via IPDTL.